One morning, I caught them standing in my yard again, clipboard in hand, camera pointed straight at my window. At first, I thought it was a mistake, maybe a routine inspection. But then came the fines, the threats, the letters slipped under my door. They said I was trespassing on my own property. That's when I realized this wasn't about lawn rules or fences. It was about control. And someone inside our HOA was willing to destroy a homeowner to keep their secret buried. And I'm the one who found out why. It started 2 months ago. A single notice taped to my front door in the middle of a quiet Tuesday morning. Violation number 2037, unauthorized trespassing on community property. At first, I thought it was a joke. How could I trespass on my own yard? But when I looked closer, I saw the timestamp, 6:42 a.m., and the attached photo, me walking along the narrow strip of grass behind my house with pruning shears in hand. The irony hit hard. I was cleaning my own fence line, the same line I'd maintained since moving here 3 years ago. My neighborhood, Briarwood Estates, was the kind of place that looked perfect on postcards. Manicured lawns, pastel stucco homes, kids riding bikes, and cul-de-sacs named after trees. It sat just outside Sacramento, California, close enough to the city for a commute, far enough for peace. Or so I thought. I moved here after my divorce, thinking a quiet community would give me a reset. I didn't realize that quiet can sometimes mean controlled. The notice accused me of entering HOA-managed property without authorization. It cited bylaws, sections, and penalties that looked like they'd been copied straight from a lawyer's playbook. That morning, I brushed it off. Some board member overreaching, some small-town power trip. But that evening, when I got home from work, there was another envelope waiting in the mailbox. Certified mail, this time. Stamped with the HOA seal, signed by Linda Prescott, HOA president. Further violations may result in fines and legal action. 2 notices, same day. That wasn't random. That was coordination. I stood on my porch, the paper trembling in my hand, when I noticed a car parked across the street. Silver sedan, tinted windows, engine running. I'd seen it before, once last week, once the week before that. As soon as I looked directly at it, the headlights turned on. The car rolled away. It's a strange feeling the first time you realize someone's watching you. You don't get scared right away. You get curious. Then, slowly, the fear creeps in. The next day, I went to the HOA office at the Briarwood Clubhouse. The place looked sterile and polished, all neutral tones and framed motivational quotes. Behind the counter sat a young receptionist with a practiced smile. "Hi," I said, holding up the letter. "I think there's been a mistake." She glanced at it, didn't even blink. "You'll need to speak with the board at our next meeting." "When's that?" "Next Tuesday, 7 p.m. "I'd rather clear this up now." "I'm sorry, sir. The board handles violations directly. You can submit an appeal in writing." "In writing," I repeated. "For walking in my own yard." She smiled again, the kind of smile that says, "You can fight this if you want, but you'll lose." That night, I started digging through my old paperwork, the home inspection, the property plat, the original deed. I found what I was looking for, a small gray line running behind my fence labeled Shared Access Easement. It meant I had the right to maintain that strip of land. So why did the HOA call it theirs? The next morning, I logged onto the HOA website. That's when I saw it. The community map had changed. The green belt behind my property was now shaded gray, labeled Preservation Area, HOA Managed. The update date, 2 weeks ago. The signature on the change, approved by L. Prescott. That name kept repeating. On the violation notice, on the amendment, on the certified mail. Linda Prescott. I'd met her once at a neighborhood barbecue. Mid-40s, polished, the kind of person that made you feel inspected when she talked to you. I remember her saying something about how communities thrive when everyone stays in their lane. Now, I understood what she meant. That evening, I stood on my back porch looking at the narrow greenbelt behind my fence. The sun dipped low, shadows stretching long over the grass. Somewhere out there, I heard the faint hum of a drone. I looked up, and there it was. Small, black, hovering just above the tree line. It tilted slightly, camera pointed straight at my window. I froze. My pulse climbed. The drone hovered for maybe 5 seconds, then drifted away toward the cul-de-sac. I stepped back inside, shut the door, and locked it.
By the time Tuesday came around, the whole neighborhood felt colder. It wasn't just the weather, it was the looks. Neighbors I'd known for years now gave small, tight smiles and turned away a little too quickly. A few wouldn't even meet my eyes. Word had gotten out. That's how HOA power worked, not through laws, but through whispers. I parked near the Briarwood clubhouse just as the sun dropped behind the rooftops. The lot was full. I wasn't the only one called in. Through the glass doors, I saw them. The board. 5 people sitting behind a long table draped in navy cloth, each with a stack of papers, water bottles, and the same expression of rehearsed authority. In the middle sat Linda Prescott. She wore a charcoal blazer, her posture straight, smile sharp as glass. The meeting started like every other HOA session. Updates about landscaping budgets, noise complaints, and some poor guy arguing about his trash bins being visible from the street. Then, Linda called my name. Mr. Mark Ellis, violation number 2037, trespassing on HOA property. All the chatter stopped. Dozens of heads turned. I stood, walked to the microphone, and unfolded the notice. My hands were steady, but my voice felt heavy in my throat. I received this notice last week, I began. It says I was trespassing behind my own fence, but that strip of land has been accessible to homeowners since this community was built. I have the original deed to prove it. Linda gave a soft, practiced smile. Thank you, Mr. Ellis. However, as of June 1st, the area in question was reclassified as protected HOA land. Maintenance and access are now restricted. Reclassified by who? I asked. The board. When did that vote happen? Because I don't remember seeing it on any agenda. Her expression didn't change. Not all administrative updates require community notice. That sounds illegal. A ripple moved through the room. Neighbors exchanging glances, a few whispering. Linda leaned forward slightly, voice honey smooth. Mr. Ellis, the rules exist to maintain harmony. You agreed to them when you bought your property. I agreed to fairness, not to having my backyard stolen by a technicality. Her smile faltered, just barely. No one has stolen anything. You simply don't own what you thought you did. That sentence hit harder than it should have. You don't own what you thought you did. It was the kind of line that burrows under your skin and stays there. I took a breath. If this is about the greenbelt, fine, I'll stay off it. But I want this violation removed from my record. It's false. She turned to the others. The board members leaned together, whispering. Papers shuffled. Finally, she said, "The board denies your appeal. The violation stands." No explanation, no discussion. Just a sentence that sealed itself in silence. "That's it?" I said. "Yes," she replied, tone flat. "Further disputes can be filed in writing with the HOA Legal Committee. You'll find the forms online." The meeting moved on. They jumped to landscaping contracts like nothing happened. I stood there, heart hammering, surrounded by quiet stares. Then, I turned and walked out. The parking lot was dark now, streetlights humming. As I reached my truck, A man stepped out from behind a column. "Mr. Ellis?" I froze. He wore a gray suit, no tie, carrying a leather folder. He looked more like a corporate auditor than a neighbor. "I'm Greg Harlan, HOA legal counsel." "Counsel?" "Miss Prescott asked me to remind you continued noncompliance could result in property fines or restrictions. You mean retaliation." His eyes flickered with something like amusement. "Just advice." Then he handed me a card and walked away. I sat in the truck for a while, watching people filter out of the building. Some avoided me. One man, older, hesitated before getting in his car. He glanced around, then approached my window. "Don't fight her publicly," he said quietly. "That's what she wants. Prescott's got ties, developer money, county officials. You'll lose in open session." "Then how do I win?" I asked. He looked at me like he wasn't supposed to answer. "Find out why she wants that land. It's not about trespassing." Then he slipped away into the dark. When I got home, the house felt different, the kind of quiet that presses on your chest. I poured a drink, sat down at my desk, and started researching. Linda Prescott wasn't just an HOA president. She was the daughter of Richard Prescott, the original developer of Briarwood Estates. He'd built 6 other communities in California, all under the same management company, Prescott Residential Holdings. I pulled county records, and that's when I saw it. A new filing, recorded just 2 weeks earlier. Boundary Adjustment, Briarwood Estates, parcels 47B through 47D. It was the same strip of land behind my fence. The adjustment had been signed by Linda Prescott and witnessed by none other than Greg Harlan, the HOA attorney. They'd changed the boundary lines before accusing me of trespassing. It wasn't about enforcement, it was about ownership. I leaned back, the truth slowly piecing itself together. The first thing they take is your peace. The next thing they take is your land. And before you know it, you're fighting a war you never agreed to fight. I stared out the window at the quiet street, and there it was again. That silver sedan, parked under the lamppost. Engine off. Lights out. Just waiting.
The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. I didn't send alarm. My body just wouldn't rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that silver car, the flicker of its headlights, the faint hum of that drone. I stepped outside with a cup of coffee, the air still cool and heavy with dew. The neighborhood looked peaceful, like it always did at dawn. But peace is easy to fake when you've learned how to hide the rot underneath. I walked along the side of my house toward the back fence, the same fence that had started this whole mess. That narrow strip of grass, about 3 feet wide, separated my property from the greenbelt. Only this time, something looked off. The grass near the fence was disturbed. Not just from animals, it was too clean, too deliberate. Small orange survey flags dotted the soil every few feet, fresh stakes with black ink scrawled across them. I crouched down. The ink was still sharp, like it hadn't faced a full day of sun yet. Someone had been out here last night. One of the stakes had a small metal tag stapled to it. Parcel 47BA, HOA Boundary Revision. They were expanding their claim, 1 yard at a time. I checked the other side of the fence. No flags there, just the green belt stretching out toward the drainage canal. If the HOA was marking property lines, it wasn't just me. It was the entire row of houses. A cold realization settled in. This wasn't about me walking behind my fence. This was about shifting the fence itself. I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures. Every stake, every tag, every angle. I wanted proof. While I was at it, I noticed something else. A small rectangular mark on my fence post. Not paint, a sticker. White with tiny black dots arranged in a grid. A QR code. I scanned it. It led to a private page on the HOA website.
Briarwood Boundary Compliance Inspection Log. The page required admin access. I tried my homeowner credentials. Denied. So how do they get it there? As I turned to head back, I heard a noise, the crunch of gravel. A man in a neon safety vest was standing by the greenbelt, clipboard in hand. I hadn't seen him before. No company logo, no truck nearby. "Morning," I called out. He hesitated. "Just checking drainage markers." "You with the county?" He nodded too quickly. "Yeah, county." "Got ID?" He blinked, then turned and walked off fast, cutting across the greenbelt until he disappeared between the trees. I stood there, heart pounding, realizing I just watched someone trespass on the very property they accused me of stepping onto. By noon, I'd printed every photo and took them straight to the county surveyor's office. The clerk, an older woman with gray hair and tired eyes, looked through the photos and frowned. "These tags, I don't recognize the numbering." "They're from Briarwood Estates, Parcel 47, Section B." She typed something into her system. "Those parcels haven't been updated in over 5 years. No active survey permits. And those markers," she zoomed in on one of the photos, "aren't county issued. They're private." "Private?" "Developers sometimes use them before submitting official paperwork." "Developers?" I repeated. "But the development's finished." She gave me a sympathetic look. "Then someone's trying to reopen it." When I left the building, I sat in my truck for a long while, staring at the county logo on the envelope she had handed me. Proof that no legitimate survey was happening. That evening, I emailed the HOA board. I attached the photos and a copy of the county's statement. I wrote only one line. "If you're going to accuse me of trespassing, at least do it from property you legally own." I didn't expect a reply, but I got one. An hour later, my inbox pinged. From admin@briarwoodestateshoa.org. Subject, cease and desist, unauthorized photography. It read, "Mr. Ellis, your continued monitoring of HOA maintenance activity constitutes harassment and potential violation of civil privacy codes. Cease all recording immediately or face escalation." They were threatening me for taking pictures of my own fence. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling I wasn't alone. Around midnight, I heard movement outside, soft steps on gravel. I turned off the lights, looked through the blinds. 2 figures, flashlights low, scanning the ground near the fence line. They weren't wearing safety vests. I grabbed my phone, started recording through the window. The footage was grainy but clear enough. 2 silhouettes, one male, one female, placing markers into the soil. One of them looked up. The flashlight beam cut straight toward my window. I ducked away. My heart slammed against my ribs. When I looked again, they were gone. The next morning, the flags were still there, but my mailbox was open, hanging crooked. Inside was a single sheet of paper, no envelope. The envelope was thick, official-looking, heavier than the usual HOA letters. It came by courier this time, not mail, the kind where someone has to hand it to you and watch you sign. The man didn't say a word, just clipped his pen back to his shirt pocket and walked away without making eye contact. Inside, the paper was crisp, printed on expensive letterhead. Notice of formal violation hearing, Briarwood Estates Homeowners Association. Subject, pattern of non-compliance, unauthorized surveillance, and harassment of HOA personnel. My name was listed in bold right under it. There was a date, a time, and a line that made my stomach turn. You are required to appear before the HOA board for formal disciplinary action. Failure to attend may result in fines,
liens, or suspension of community privileges. Suspension of community privileges. That's how they said, "We can make your life disappear." It was scheduled for Thursday, 3 days away. By the time I finished reading, my hands were shaking. I wasn't just being warned anymore. I was being prosecuted. Inside a system designed, owned, and operated by the same people accusing me. I spent the next day gathering everything I could. The property deed, the county's email confirming no new survey permits, photos of the flags, screenshots of the boundary compliance page that had denied me access. Part of me still believed logic could fix this, that if I just showed them the facts, they'd back down. But deep down, another part of me already knew the truth. Facts don't matter when power writes its own version. Thursday evening, I parked outside the clubhouse again. The same building, the same polished tile floors, the same faint scent of lemon cleaner that somehow made my skin crawl. When I walked in, the board was already seated. 5 faces arranged in a perfect row of authority. Linda Prescott sat dead center, her hands folded neatly on a folder labeled Ellis Case. A camera was mounted in the corner, recording. She smiled like I'd just walked into a dinner party. "Mr. Ellis, thank you for attending." "Didn't have much of a choice," I said. "This hearing is a formal process. We want to give you a fair opportunity to explain your actions before the board determines disciplinary measures." "Fair?" I repeated. "After you falsified a trespassing claim and adjusted my property line without notice?" Her expression didn't change. "Mr. Ellis, accusations like that are serious. I suggest you stick to facts." "I am." The room was small, but my voice echoed anyway. She slid a paper across the table. It was a printed screenshot, my email to the board, the one where I'd attached the photos of the survey flags. "You've been photographing HOA personnel. You've shared these images without authorization, which violates community privacy policies. Those personnel were trespassing behind my home in the middle of the night. Do you have proof of that?" "I have video." Her eyes sharpened. "You recorded people without consent?" "I was on my property." "That's not what the records show." The board members nodded like a synchronized choir. Each one had a folder, each one flipping pages at the same time, reading whatever narrative had already been written. I opened my binder and pulled out the county statement. According to Sacramento County, no legal surveys have been authorized for Briarwood Estates in the last 5 years. Whoever placed those markers did so without permit. That's criminal trespass, not maintenance. She glanced at the paper, then set it aside without reading. County errors happen all the time. "Not when they're signed by the deputy surveyor." Her smile tightened. "Mr. Ellis, it's becoming clear that this discussion is unproductive. The board has already reviewed your case and voted." "Voted?" I asked. "Before I even spoke?" She didn't answer directly. "Effective immediately, you are fined for harassment, noncompliance, and obstruction of HOA operations. Continued defiance may result in legal action." I stared at her, speechless. "You call this a hearing?" She looked at the others. "Meeting adjourned." The gavel struck the table. The sound cracked like a gunshot. I stood there for a moment, trying to decide whether to yell or laugh or just walk out. I chose silence, because suddenly I understood something. This wasn't a battle about rules. It was about ownership, not of land, but of narrative. They weren't punishing me for trespassing. They were punishing me for not submitting. When I stepped outside, the parking lot was empty except for one car, the silver sedan. This time I didn't avoid it. I walked straight toward it. As I got close, the window rolled down. A woman I hadn't seen before sat behind the wheel. Mid-30s, dark hair, state badge clipped to her lapel. She said, "Mr. Ellis?" I said yes. She handed me a card. California Department of Real Estate, Investigations Unit, Officer Rosa Vega. She said, "We need to talk, but not here." She looked past me toward the clubhouse. They don't like it when people start asking questions. Then she drove off, taillights disappearing into the dark. I stood there holding her card, the night pressing in around me. When the system is rigged, your only hope is finding someone who still believes in rules that can't be rewritten. I didn't know who she really was. I just knew she was the first person who didn't look away. I didn't sleep that night. The card sat on my kitchen table like a ticking clock. California Department of Real Estate, Investigations Unit, Officer Rosa Vega. I kept staring at it, wondering what it meant. Why would a state investigator show up at a suburban HOA hearing? By morning, I'd memorized her phone number. I called just after 7 a.m. A man answered, generic voicemail greeting. I left a message anyway. An hour later, she called back. "Mr. Ellis?" Her voice was calm, measured, the kind that belongs to someone used to walking into hostile rooms. "I'd like to meet," she said, "somewhere off record." "Why me?" I asked. "You've been flagged." "Flagged for what?" There was a pause. "Let's just say Briarwood Estates isn't the only development under review." We met that afternoon at a cafe on the edge of town, one of those quiet spots tucked between a hardware store and a dry cleaner where nobody notices you unless you cause trouble. She was already there when I arrived. Early 30s, sharp eyes, no nonsense. She wore plain clothes, but everything about her posture said law enforcement. "Thanks for meeting me," I said. "I don't have much time, so I'll be direct." She slid a folder across the table. Inside were printed maps, financial filings, and what looked like property assessment records. "This," she said, tapping the top page, "is a pattern. Multiple HOAs across the state, all linked to a single development firm." I looked at the name. Prescott Residential Holdings. The same company listed on Briarwood's paperwork. They're doing boundary reassignments, small adjustments, 2 feet here, 3 there. Over time, they reclassify entire sections of land, then sell or lease the greenbelt parcels back to municipalities as public access zones. And the homeowners? Lose square footage, sometimes entire yards, but since the paperwork looks legitimate, most don't notice until the property tax maps update. I stared at the documents. So that's why they called it trespassing. They wanted to redraw the line first, make me the criminal for standing where I've always stood. Exactly. She leaned in, lowering her voice. "What you're dealing with isn't an overzealous HOA. It's a profit mechanism. The board is just the face." "Who's behind it?" "Developers, attorneys, a few county clerks. It's coordinated." Her tone stayed steady, but her eyes were scanning the cafe, checking reflections in the glass, gauging exits. "You think they're watching you?" I asked. "I know they are. I've already had 2 informants back out after unexpected visits from Prescott's lawyers. The moment this investigation goes public, it gets buried." She paused. "You have something they don't." "What's that?" "Footage, documents, a clean record." "You think my video means anything to people like that?" "Evidence only matters if you survive long enough to show it." For a second, we both went quiet. The espresso machine hissed behind us. Someone laughed near the counter. Then she said, "If you really want to fight this, don't go to the HOA again. Go to the land records office. Get every deed change from the last 5 years. Look for parcels that moved less than a yard. That's their footprint." She stood, leaving cash on the table. "And, Mr. Ellis, don't tell anyone we met." When she walked out, I caught my reflection in the window. Tired, anxious, but something else too. Resolve. That night, I did exactly what she said. The Sacramento County Recorder's website wasn't user-friendly, but I knew what to look for now. Parcel adjustments under 1 meter. Within an hour, I found over 30, every one tied to the same notary, G. Harlan. The HOA lawyer. Each adjustment had a signature block listing the local board president. Different communities, same pattern. Linda Prescott's name appeared 5 times. It was systematic, hidden in plain sight. I printed the records, each page shaking slightly in my hands. Then I opened an anonymous email account and sent copies to the address Rosa had written on her card. A reply came back 5 minutes later. Got it. You just confirmed a state-level pattern. Keep everything offline. If you see anyone new near your property, call me first. I stared at the screen, the weight of her words sinking in. State-level pattern. It wasn't just Briarwood. It was happening everywhere. The next day, I came home from work to find my side gate unlocked. I'd locked it that morning. I always did. Inside, the yard looked undisturbed, but something felt off. My back porch light was on, even though the bulb had been dead for weeks. That's when I noticed the smell. Burnt plastic. I looked up. The small camera I'd mounted above my garage was gone. Just a melted bracket left. They hadn't stolen it. They'd fried it. I stepped inside the house, every nerve alert. The curtains were closed, but not how I left them. My desk drawer was slightly open, the one with my flash drives. They were gone. I called Rosa immediately. She answered on the first ring. Tell me exactly what's missing. 2 USB drives. They had the fence footage and the survey photos. Her voice dropped. That confirms it. They know you're talking to me. What do I do? Stay visible, she said. They don't like attention. Keep lights on, cameras up, neighbors talking. The moment they think you're scared, they'll escalate. I looked around the dark living room. My hands were shaking. I already am scared. I know, she said quietly, but that's how they win. That night I sat by the window with the lights off, watching the street. Every sound, every car door, every passing headlight made my heart jump. At 2:13 a.m., I saw movement near the fence again. A figure, flashlight off, crouching near the survey flags. I grabbed my phone, started recording. This time, when I yelled, "Hey," the person didn't run. They stood up, slowly, and faced me. It was Greg Harlan. He looked directly at my window, smiled faintly, then turned and walked into the dark. When truth becomes dangerous, they don't hide it. They brandish it, just to let you know they're untouchable. I sat there, adrenaline still pounding, and realized something Rosa had said was already happening. They weren't just watching me anymore. They were warning me to stop.
I didn't notice the sound at first. It was small, a dull metallic click beneath the hum of the refrigerator, the kind of noise that's easy to dismiss until it repeats. 2:37 a.m., another click, then the faint creak of hinges. Every instinct I had said don't move, but adrenaline always lies. I was already standing, every nerve burning. I grabbed the flashlight from the counter and slipped down the hall. The air felt heavier, charged. From the kitchen doorway, I could see moonlight spilling through the blinds, cutting sharp angles across the floor. And then, a shadow moved. Someone was inside my house. I didn't call out. I didn't even breathe. I just watched as the figure glided toward the dining room, gloved hands, small tool bag slung over one shoulder. Professional, not a burglar. I flicked on the light. "Hey!" The man froze, half-turned. Ski mask, dark clothes. No panic, just a slow pivot toward me. We locked eyes for maybe a second before he bolted. I chased him as far as the porch, barefoot on cold concrete. By the time I reached the yard, he was already gone, sprinting across the greenbelt, vanishing into the oaks like he'd rehearsed it. The back door lock hung twisted, neatly pried open. Inside, drawers were open, files scattered. My laptop still sat on the desk, but the external drive that held my backups was gone.
So was the envelope of printed deeds I'd kept from the recorder's office. They hadn't come for money. They'd come for proof. The police arrived 20 minutes later. 2 officers, polite, but detached. The kind of detached that says, "This isn't our problem." "No signs of forced entry from the front," one said, jotting notes without looking up. "Probably just a random burglary." Random? I pointed at the paperwork still strewn across my floor. "They took legal documents, nothing else." He shrugged. "Maybe they thought you had cash hidden inside." I stared at him, realizing he wasn't going to help. The other officer wandered into the living room, scanning the walls. "You said you've had issues with your HOA?" "Yes." He sighed, pen pausing. "Well, sir, we can file a report, but unless you have video of the suspect's face, there's not much we can do." Video. They'd already taken every camera I had. After they left, I sat on the floor surrounded by overturned papers, the flashing red glow of the alarm clock painting the room in pulses. You think evidence protects you until the night it disappears. Then you realize evidence isn't safety. It's a target. At sunrise, I called Rosa Vega. She picked up on the first ring. I said, "They broke in." She asked, "How bad?" I said, "They took everything. Drives, printed deeds, even my cameras." She asked, "Was anything left behind?" I glanced at the floor. Amid the mess, one envelope stood out, plain white, resting perfectly centered on the dining table. My name typed neatly on the front. I said, "There's something here." She said, "Don't touch it yet." But I had already. Inside was a single sheet of paper. One line typed in bold. "This ends now. Or next time, it's not just paper." No signature, no logo, but faintly visible beneath the print, the watermark of Prescott Residential Holdings. Rosa exhaled on the line. "They're escalating. You need to get out of there for a while." "And let them win?" "You're no use to me dead, Mark." She told me to meet her at a motel outside town, somewhere off the grid. She said, "Bring what's left. We'll start again from scratch." I packed what little remained. Copies of the violation letters, the HOA emails, and the still-framed shot from the fence footage showing Harlan's face in the dark. Before I left, I took one last look around the house. The front door frame was splintered, the lock barely hanging on. The morning light poured in like nothing had happened. Neighbors walked their dogs. Sprinklers ticked. Normalcy dripped off every surface. I wondered how many of them knew. The motel Rosa picked was off Highway 50. Peeling paint, flickering sign, the kind of place people forget after staying. She was waiting in the parking lot, sunglasses on, a file folder in her hand. She said, "They sent professionals. No prints, no tracks. Whoever did this has access to private security contracts." I said, "Prescott's?" She said, "Most likely. I think the HOA is just a mask now, a way to move money and property without public oversight." She opened the folder and showed me a satellite map marked with red dots. "These are all properties under review. Every one shows minor boundary shifts filed in the last 6 months." There were dozens. Why hasn't the state stopped them? Because the people who could stop them are the ones signing off on the paperwork. She closed the folder. "You're the only homeowner who's documented the process in real time. That makes you leverage and liability." "What's the plan?" She said, "We go public, controlled leak, but we need one thing first, hard copies of their internal memos. They store them off-site." "Where?" She looked at me, expression unreadable. She said, "A storage yard outside Elk Grove. The company calls it a construction archive." My pulse quickened. "You've been there?" She said, "Once. Didn't get far." I leaned back in the chair, trying to breathe.
The motel air smelled of bleach and old smoke. I said quietly, "So that's it. We break in." She gave a faint, tired smile. "We reclaim what's ours." That night, back in my truck, I sat under the neon motel sign, replaying everything that had happened. The trespass notice, the meetings, the threats, the man in my house. It all led to the same conclusion. They weren't protecting the neighborhood. They were protecting the con. Sometimes justice isn't about winning. It's about surviving long enough to tell the story. I turned the key, engine rumbling to life, headlights cutting through the dark. Next stop, the yard.
The drive to Elk Grove felt longer than it should have. Rosa sat in the passenger seat, quiet, eyes fixed on the road ahead. The night stretched wide and empty. Flat farmland, silhouettes of warehouses glowing faintly under sodium lights. Every few miles, a truck rumbled by, shaking the cab. We didn't talk much. There wasn't anything left to say that wouldn't make the silence heavier. Finally, the road narrowed into a gravel lane marked only by a faded sign. Prescott Construction Storage, authorized access only. "This is it," Rosa said, checking her watch. "Security sweep happens every 40 minutes. We've got 15. The facility wasn't what I expected. No massive buildings, no guard shack, just a wide dirt yard ringed by chain-link fencing and stacked with rows of rust-red shipping containers. A few floodlights buzzed high above, cutting the darkness into narrow bands of yellow and shadow. Rosa handed me a flashlight and a small tool pouch. "The files will be paper, hard copies. They use this place as an off-books archive to avoid digital trails." "Why not just burn them?" "Because they still need them to fake audits." We parked a quarter-mile away and went in on foot, staying low along the fence line, until Rosa found what she was looking for, a weak padlock rusted half through. She snipped it clean with bolt cutters and pushed the gate open just enough to slip through. Inside, the air smelled like metal and dust. The rows of containers were labeled with codes: BRW E47, SB R32, PNC 09. "Those are abbreviations," Rosa whispered. "Briarwood, Stonebridge, Pinecrest, every HOA they've built." We moved between the stacks, flashlights off most of the time. My boots sank into loose dirt. Somewhere nearby, a generator hummed. Rosa stopped at one container near the back, BRW E47, my neighborhood. She wedged a crowbar into the latch, grunted softly, and the door popped open with a low metallic groan. Inside were cardboard boxes, neatly stacked and labeled by year. I grabbed one, slid it open. Deeds, survey maps, HOA violation records, hundreds of them. Rosa flipped through another box and froze. "Look at this." She handed me a folder labeled Boundary Adjustments, Fiscal Projections. Inside were spreadsheets showing projected revenue from parcel reallocations, the greenbelts and buffers that had been quietly reclassified as HOA property, then sold to subsidiary firms for landscaping contracts. "This isn't just one community," she said. "They're reselling land to themselves." My pulse kicked hard. "That's embezzlement." She nodded. "And tax fraud." Then she pulled out a thinner envelope marked Legal Oversight G. Harlan. Inside were notarized documents with his signature, dozens of them. Each one approving boundary changes across multiple counties. We'd found the link. I took out my phone, started snapping photos. Rosa did the same. Every page, every signature. A sound broke the rhythm, distant, faint, but unmistakable. An engine. We froze. Headlights sliced across the yard entrance. A pickup truck turned in, rolling slow between the rows. "Security," Rosa whispered. "We're out of time." We shut the container quietly and ducked behind another stack. The truck stopped 20 yards away. A man got out, heavy flashlight, radio crackling on his shoulder. He started walking our direction.
Rosa mouthed, "This way," and pointed toward the fence. We moved fast but quiet, staying in the shadows. My heartbeat thudded so loud it felt like the air could hear it. The guard stopped near the container we'd opened, sweeping his light along the ground. It caught the faint glint of a dropped bolt. He crouched. The radio crackled again. We slipped behind a stack marked PNC-09 and found a narrow gap in the fence, torn wire maybe, from a storm. I held it open for her to crawl through. "Go," she hissed. "You first." She slipped through. I followed. But just as I did, the guard's light swung in our direction. "Hey!" We bolted across the field, dirt kicking up behind us, lungs burning. The flashlight being cut across my shoulder, then vanished. By the time we reached the truck, Rosa was already dialing her phone. "We got enough," she said between breaths. "We don't go back." I looked down. I was still clutching one of the folders. I hadn't even realized I'd taken it. The label read, "Prescott Holdings, Internal Summary, HOA Consolidation, 2021. We drove until the city lights disappeared behind us. The folder sat on the dash, glowing under the weak cabin light like a piece of evidence that could either save us or destroy us. "What happens if they find out we were there?" I asked. Rosa stared out the window. "They already know." At the motel room, we spread the papers across the bed. The summary report was dense. Dates, numbers, coded initials. But one section stood out. Projected Asset Integration Timeline, Q4. Target completion, full HOA ownership transfer of all undeveloped parcels statewide. And below that, a single line that made my stomach drop. Community leads tasked with suppressing homeowner dissent. Priority, Briarwood Estates. It was signed by Linda Prescott. Rosa sat down, exhaling. She's not just the face. She's orchestrating it. "We leak it, tonight." She hesitated. "If we push this without verification, they'll spin it as fabrication. We need corroboration, at least one whistleblower inside." "Who?" She looked at me, then away. "There's a clerk at the county records office. She's been feeding me information anonymously. But if she talks on record, she's a target." Rosa nodded. "Like you." The motel room fell quiet again. Outside, a siren wailed somewhere far away. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the folder. Pages that could topple a company, maybe an entire network. I realized how small I was in all of it. Just one homeowner trying to keep a yard he'd already paid for. They say justice starts small. A law, a case, a voice. But when power builds its walls out of paper, one missing signature can bring the whole thing down. Rosa looked at me and said, almost softly, "We just lit the fuse."
The next morning, the motel felt smaller. Air thick, curtains drawn tight against the daylight. Neither of us had slept much. Rosa sat by the desk with her laptop open, scrolling through the files we'd pulled from the yard. I stood by the window, watching cars pass on the highway. Every time I saw a black SUV, my pulse quickened. "Her name's Danielle Halloran," Rosa said finally. "Senior clerk, Sacramento County Recorder's Office. She's been sending me anonymous documents for months. Deed transfers, audit memos, zoning notes, all linked to Prescott Holdings." Halloran. The name tugged at something familiar. I'd seen it before, stamped at the bottom of one of my own property filings. "Is she safe?" I asked. Rosa shook her head. "I called her last night. She didn't answer. I checked her work schedule. She hasn't clocked in since Tuesday. That was 2 days ago, the same night of the break-in. Could be a coincidence," I said, even though we both knew better. She closed the laptop. Coincidences don't last long in this line of work. We drove to her apartment that afternoon, a quiet complex near the county line. Rows of beige buildings, neat hedges, no signs of struggle. The manager met us at the gate, a nervous man in a polo shirt who kept glancing over his shoulder. "She's gone," he said. "Moved out yesterday. Paid in cash, no forwarding address." Rose's voice hardened. "Did anyone come with her?" "Two men in suits. Said they were from the state auditor's office." She exchanged a look with me. The real auditors never move that fast. "Did she leave anything behind?" Rosa asked. He hesitated, then pulled a small envelope from his pocket. "She said if anyone from the investigation showed up, give them this." Rosa opened it. Inside was a folded sheet of lined paper, handwriting shaky but legible. "If you're reading this, they found me. Check parcel 49C, storage locker under my name, code 1024. No signature, no date, but the handwriting trembled, fear etched into ink. Rosa folded it carefully, slipped it into her pocket. "We're going." The storage facility was on the outskirts of West Sacramento. Industrial park, razor wire fence, humming power lines overhead. Rows of metal roll-up doors stretched in both directions. Locker 49C was near the back, hidden behind a half-collapsed awning. Rosa punched in the code, 1024. The keypad beeped, then unlocked with a metallic click. The door groaned upward, dust swirling in the sunlight. Inside were boxes, dozens of them, labels faded but still legible. Audit duplicates, boundary transfers, Prescott HR. "This is it," she whispered. We started opening boxes one by one. Most were full of copies of old county filings, but near the back, tucked under a tarp, I found something different. A small plastic bin labeled Audio Archives. Inside were handheld recorders, 6 of them. I picked one up, pressed play. Static. Then a voice. Danielle's. "I can't keep signing off these forms, Rosa. It's not just zoning. They're fabricating votes. HOA approvals that never happened. I've seen the originals. Someone's forging resident signatures, thousands of them. If I go missing, you know who did it." The recording cut off abruptly. Rosa exhaled slowly. She knew she was being watched. We loaded what we could into the trunk, files, audio, anything that looked useful. As we shut the locker, a low rumble echoed from the far end of the lot. A dark SUV rolled in, tinted windows, no plates. Rosa swore under her breath. They found us. I jumped into the passenger seat as she started the engine. Gravel kicked up behind us. The SUV accelerated, closing fast. "Stay low," she said, gripping the wheel tight. "If they box us in, bail left." They followed us out of the facility and onto the access road. For a moment I thought we'd lost them, until I saw the second SUV pull onto the highway ahead, blocking the lane. Rosa floored it. The truck fishtailed, then swerved hard into a side road that cut through an industrial park. "Rosa!" "I know," she said. "Hold on." The car bounced over potholes, dust flooding the cabin. Behind us, the SUVs followed, their headlights slicing through the haze. Then, just as we reached the dead end, Rosa spun the wheel and killed the lights. We coasted behind a stack of shipping pallets. The SUVs roared past, tires screaming. We waited, breathless, until the sound faded. When we finally exhaled, my hands were shaking. Rosa looked at me. "We can't go back to the motel. They'll be waiting." "Then where?" "Somewhere they can't erase." We ended up at a 24-hour diner near the river. Fluorescent lights, coffee burned to sludge, a waitress who didn't ask questions. Rosa laid out the papers between us, voice low but urgent. She was the only insider willing to talk. If they silenced her, they'll come for us next. I scrolled through the files on my phone, looking for anything that connected Danielle's recordings to the documents from the yard. And then I found it. A memo marked HOA Voter Roll Digital Revision. Under the Approved By column,
D. Halloran. Except the signature wasn't hers. It was a forgery. They'd used her name to authenticate the fake documents and then erased her afterward. I looked up at Rosa. They framed her. She nodded grimly. And now they're cleaning house. We sat there in silence for a long while, the hum of the diner filling the space between us. The deeper we dug, the smaller we got. Two people staring down a machine built to rewrite history. But paper leaves ghosts, and some ghosts don't stay buried. Rosa reached for her phone, fingers trembling slightly. I'm calling a reporter I trust. If anything happens to me, she gets everything. Rosa. She looked up, eyes tired but fierce. They took Danielle. They won't take me quietly.
The decision to go public didn't feel heroic. It felt like a countdown. Rosa and I drove in silence towards Sacramento until the skyline began to glow. The city was half asleep, half guarded. She parked near an old newspaper office hidden behind a chain-link fence, the Sentinel-Journal. "This is where it starts," she said. "Editor's name is Miles Riley. He doesn't scare easily." Inside, he met us in a dim back room stacked with papers. Late 40s, tired eyes. The kind of man who'd seen too many truths buried alive. Rosa laid everything out. Fraud across multiple HOAs, forged documents, Prescott's development scheme. I added, "They broke into my house." He didn't flinch. "Show me." We played Danielle's recordings. When her voice faded, he leaned back slowly. "If I run this, you won't just be fighting a board. You'll be fighting a corporation with federal friends." Rosa didn't blink. "We're sure enough to lose everything." He stood. "Give me 48 hours. We hid in a cheap motel by the freeway. The room smelled like old carpet and cigarettes. At some point, I fell asleep. When I woke, Rosa was gone. Her phone buzzed with missed calls, one from Riley, one from an unknown number. I answered Riley. "Rosa's gone." She called me, said she's meeting someone who could verify the documents. "Where?" She didn't say. Then my phone vibrated again. Unknown number. "Tell her to stop. We don't need another accident." Attached. A photo of her car outside a warehouse. I drove like hell. The warehouse was abandoned. Her car sat outside, driver door open, keys in the ignition. "Rosa!" No answer. Until a weak voice echoed inside. "Mark!" I found her on the floor, wrists zip-tied, bruised but alive. "They wanted the files," she whispered. I didn't talk. I freed her. "We're leaving." But headlights flashed through the cracks in the door. Too late. 3 men walked in, suits, calm, trained. One of them was Greg Harlan. "You should have stopped when you had the chance. Control doesn't care about guilt or innocence. It cares about silence." Rosa glared. "Then you're going to have a problem." Sirens cut through the night. Red and blue lights bled into the room. Riley had called the cops. Harlan didn't panic. He just stepped back. "We'll talk again," then slipped out the back as police stormed in. Hours later, at the station, officers took statements, but kept their distance. No one wanted to touch corporate corruption. Rosa whispered, "He's not done." She was right. 2 days later, the Sentinel-Journal published the story. The HOA fraud network, how homeowners were silenced. It went viral. HOAs across the state were exposed. People messaged me. "I think it's happening here too." For a moment, it felt like we'd won. Then the retaliation began. When power can't silence you, it isolates you. The media loved the scandal, but Prescott fought back harder. They launched PR calling me a disgruntled resident with a vendetta.
Anonymous posts claimed I staged everything. They leaked my financial records. Then my boss called me in. Take a leave of absence. Corporate 4, you're fired. I went home. Liar was spray painted across my garage. Neighbors watched me clean it, filmed me. Nobody helped. Police showed up, not to help, but to advise me to stop causing trouble. That night, I sat in the dark. Only my phone lit the room. Support messages and threats. A week later, Rosa arrived, tired, angry. They're delaying audits, feeding lies to officials, making you look unstable. I handed her the newest letter, Notice of Trespassing Hearing. She said, "They're trying to flip the story, make you the criminal again." I said, "They can't prove trespassing on land I own." She said, "They don't need proof, just noise." Her phone buzzed, a news alert. Prescott denies fraud allegations, citing defamation from rogue parties. She cursed. "They're painting us as conspiracists." I said, "It feels like they're winning." She stared at me. "Only if we stop." That night, gravel crunched outside. My security light came on. A man stood at the end of my driveway, hood up, filming me. I stepped out. "You need something?" He pointed at the HOA warning sign in my yard. "You should move, Mr. Ellis, before it gets worse." He disappeared without a sound. Minutes later, police knocked on my door. "Mr. Ellis, we received reports you were harassing a neighborhood safety volunteer." I said, "He was on my property." They handed me a warning and left. When the system decides who you are, facts don't matter. The next day, flyers appeared everywhere with my face. Briarwood's troublemaker, the man who wants to destroy our community. Mailboxes, clubhouse doors, bulletin boards. They weren't just ruining my name, they were erasing me. I told Rosa, "They're trying to erase me." She was silent a moment. Then she said, "Then we give them something they can't erase." I said, "What?" She said, "Proof they can't bury. Something visual, something undeniable." She hesitated. "Mark, how much do you trust me?" I said, "After everything, completely." She said, "Good, because the next step isn't legal." The line went quiet. You can fight the law with truth, but when the law is owned by the lie, sometimes the only way to survive is to step outside it. I looked around my silent house. Whatever came next, there was no going back to peace. The line between victim and fighter had vanished, and the war had just turned personal.
I knew she meant it. We met in a deserted auto shop she used as a safe spot. On the table sat 2 black cases, lapel mics, a tiny camera, and an encrypted streaming rig. "This is our insurance," she said. "Courts won't save us. We make them expose themselves." She slid me a meeting notice, Briarwood HOA emergency session, an official setup to remove me. Harlan and Prescott will be there, our only shot. That night, I couldn't sleep. Fear whispered, but courage whispered louder. Friday, 8 p.m., I arrived early to the clubhouse. Rosa waited by the side door, disguised as staff. She clipped a mic to my shirt. "Don't confront. Let them talk. The stream goes live the second they admit coordination." Inside, the air felt fake. Linda Prescott sat at the head of the table. Greg Harlan leaned against the wall like a guard dog. "Mr. Ellis, we're here to address your defamation," Linda said smoothly. "I'm here to listen," I replied. A man in a gray suit whispered about exposure risk and suppression, then froze when Linda shot him a look. I pressed, "Suppression of what?" Harlan stepped forward. "You don't get it. Order requires narrative management." "You mean lying?" He smirked. HOA Prescott Holdings invested millions. The signatures, the transfers, approved, on paper and off. Rose's subtle nod told me the stream was live. "So you admit illegal adjustments?" I asked. Linda slammed the table. "Enough. Session adjourned." The lights cut out. Darkness, flashlights, panic rising. "They cut the power," Rosa hissed. "If they find the rig, it's over." Harlan barked. "Nobody leaves. Secure the doors." We slipped out a side exit before the lock clicked. Outside, the night buzzed with generator hum. Rosa checked her phone. "Signal weak, but it's transmitting." "How much did we get?" "Enough." Footsteps, headlights. "Stop them!" Harlan yelled. We ran across the greenbelt. Boots pounded behind us. A car screeched. Light blasted the grass. "You think a video can beat us?" he yelled. "We own the ground you're standing on." Maybe he was right, for a second. Rose's phone buzzed. Upload complete. Harlan's face changed from rage to realization. "What did you do?" "We told the truth," she said. You can bury evidence, but you can't unhear a confession once the world's listening. The video was live, thousands watching. We hadn't just survived the system, we cracked it open. By sunrise, the internet exploded. Clips of Harlan admitting off-paper approvals, Linda's meltdown, the blackout, everywhere. Caught on tape, HOA fraud meeting goes dark. News called it corruption. Talk radio called me a whistleblower. HOA called me a criminal. Rosa and I watched from a highway coffee shop as views skyrocketed, along with threats. Prescott's lawyers moved fast. Injunctions, PR spins, claims the footage was edited. When power bleeds, it doesn't die. It floods the truth until the lines blur. Anonymous messages followed. "You made a mistake. Leave California. This doesn't end with a video." Police offered protective presence. Neighbors avoided me, now with fear in their eyes. Mrs. Chapman whispered, "Be careful, they don't forgive." Within a week, the governor ordered an HOA fraud investigation. Prescott's stock dropped 7%. For the first time, hope felt real. Then came silence. Rosa frowned. "They're regrouping." "Or planning worse," I said. 3 nights later, I found out which. Power cut, a thump outside. The gate swung open. "Mark," Rosa answered on the second ring. "They're here," I said. Glass shattered, a rock rolled across my floor. Wrapped in paper, no more leaks. I ran. As I drove away, flames rose from my backyard. By the time firefighters arrived, my shed and all my backups were ash. Reporters asked if it was retaliation. I said nothing. They don't need to kill you to erase you. Just burn the proof you were right. Rosa arrived. "We need to leave. We can't run forever. Maybe not, but we need to live long enough to finish this." We hid in a cabin in the Sierra foothills. No signal, no noise. For the first time in weeks, I slept. When I woke, Rosa was gone. Her phone, bag, keys, still there. A note pinned to the fridge with a knife. "Don't look for me. Trust no one. They found me through someone close." Her handwriting, her fear. I stood there, heart pounding. The betrayal wasn't coming. It was already here.
The cabin felt colder after Rosa disappeared, like the silence itself was watching me. Her note burned in my mind. "Don't look for me. Trust no one. They found me through someone close." Someone close. Not paranoia. Resignation. When someone vanishes, you don't ask where they went. You ask who wanted them gone. I left before sunrise and drove back towards Sacramento. Every mile felt like going back into a storm. My first stop? The Sentinel-Journal. Riley looked nervous the moment I walked in. "Rosa's gone," I said. "Someone leaked her location." He swore it wasn't them. But when I asked, "Who else has access to the investigation?" he hesitated. He finally admitted they'd brought in a legal consultant from Prescott's PR firm. Name? Greg Carmichael. That name was stamped on HOA memos months ago. I left without a word. The PR firm sat in a sleek glass tower, expensive and empty. Carmichael came down himself. Calm smile, dead eyes. "Where's Rosa?" I asked. "You don't know who that is," he lied, smooth as marble. "You leaked her location." He stepped closer. "One investigator disappearing won't stop us. The truth isn't what people believe, it's what they repeat. If she's hurt," he raised a hand, "she's alive. For now." Silence turned sharp. "You should go home. Stop playing hero before you end up like her." I left before I broke his jaw. In my truck, I called her again. Voicemail. Then, ringing. "Rosa?" I answered. Static. A whisper. "Mark. They..." The line died. The call pinged from a decommissioned Prescott construction site. I drove. The site was dead quiet. Rusted machines, flapping tarps, wind howling through steel beams. A phone lay on the concrete. Cracked. Glowing. Roses. One new message. "We warned you." A motion light snapped on. Engines roared alive in the dark. I ran. Headlights exploded behind me. "He's on foot!" voices yelled. I dove under a trailer, heart pounding. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "You still don't get it. She was never on your side." I froze. Lie? Or truth? The worst part of betrayal isn't who did it. It's realizing you might have handed them the knife. I escaped in the dark, driving in silence. One question hit harder than any threat. Was Rosa running from them? Or from me? I didn't sleep. By dawn, fear became clarity. Rosa's abandoned phone wasn't just bait, it held GPS history. One trip stood out, an industrial zone near Stockton. Label? Prescott Archives. Annex B. Trap or not, I had to see it. The warehouse looked abandoned, but the fresh tire tracks and new locks told another story. Inside, rows of filing cabinets. One computer humming. A folder glowed on screen. Reclamation Plan. Phase 3. I opened it. HOA rosters from all over California, hundreds of communities marked for takeover. Briarwood Estates. Status: pending resolution. Footsteps. I hid as two men walked by. Ellis footage is still being mirrored. Prescott wants all servers wiped by midnight. What about the investigator? She's contained. They'll finish the statement once Ellis is confirmed missing. Rosa. Alive. Contained. They left. I slept out. Near the door, a guard on the phone said, "Cleanup starts tonight. Archives move to the Ridge facility." Another lead. The truth was still alive, locked in the places they thought nobody would look. But every secret has a tripwire. On the highway, my phone buzzed. An encrypted folder Rosa once shared with me. had a new file. Title: If You're Reading This. I opened it. Her voice filled the cab, shaky but strong. Mark, if you found this, I'm not dead. They're consolidating everything at a place called Ridge. That's where they'll erase it all. Servers, records, everything. You can't fight through courts. The only way is to make the public see it happen. Don't come for me. Go for the truth. The recording ended on a breath. Not fear. Resolve. For the first time in weeks, I felt the same. By sunset, I was back in my truck, engine idling, ridge coordinates glowing on the map. They wanted me to run, to disappear into their silence. But the only way out was through the noise. Tomorrow, the world would watch them burn their own lies. And this time, I wasn't the one trapped. I shifted into gear. The road ahead looked like a fuse, waiting for flame.
The Ridge facility wasn't on any map. Just a dirt road, a chain-link fence, and a hill that shouldn't have been there. By the time I reached it, dawn was turning the fog gold. The air smelled like rain and dust, the kind of silence that hides electricity underneath. The GPS ended half a mile before the fence. Beyond it, floodlights hummed over what looked like a construction site, but it wasn't. Rows of portable storage units, satellite dishes, 2 white trucks with Prescott Holdings logos. They weren't building anything. They were erasing. When corruption feels the fire coming, it doesn't run. It burns its own footprints first. I parked at the edge of the ridge, opened my phone. The stream Rosa had used for the sting was still active. Same encryption, same fail-safes. I attached a portable webcam to my dash, angled toward the facility gates. If I went down, at least the world would see why. I hiked closer through the brush, crouching low until I could see the main yard. 2 men were wheeling boxes into a steel incinerator. The air shimmered from the heat, papers curling into smoke. A 3rd man shouted, "Server room's next." And then, through the open door of a small office trailer, I saw her. Rosa. Alive. Pale. A bruise at her temple, but standing. Talking to someone I couldn't see. She turned toward the window for a split second, and her eyes caught mine. I froze. She didn't react, didn't move, just gave the smallest shake of her head. Don't. Then I saw why. Harlan stepped into view behind her. Calm. Smiling. Hands folded like a man waiting for applause. He started speaking to someone on a headset. I could only hear fragments carried on the wind. Final load ready? Audit's a formality? Ellis won't risk showing his face again. He was wrong. I slipped my phone from my pocket and started recording from the brush. Every word, every name, every timestamp visible in the frame. But then the sound changed. A faint beep from my dash cam back at the truck. The live feed had triggered. They heard it too. Harlan stiffened, turned toward the ridge. "Find it!" I ran. Boots hit gravel behind me, voices shouting orders. My lungs burned, every breath scraping like glass. I dove into the truck, slammed the door, engine roaring to life. Headlights flared behind me, 2 SUVs chasing as I tore down the dirt road, tires spitting mud. On the phone screen, the live feed was still rolling, viewers climbing, hundreds, thousands, comments flashing like sparks. What is this? Is this real? They're destroying evidence. The chase stretched across the valley, sirens in the distance, not theirs, not yet. Then Rosa's voice came through the phone speaker, faint, urgent. "Keep streaming, Mark. Don't stop." I didn't even ask how she got through. I just gripped the wheel and drove faster.
By the time I hit the highway, State Patrol cruisers were on the scanners. The stream had triggered automated reports, possible arson, tampering, federal property. The Ridge facility was no longer hidden. I pulled over on an overlook and turned the camera toward the valley. Smoke rose in plumes from the compound. Sirens wailed closer. Helicopters circled. Truth doesn't explode all at once. It leaks. It spills. It stains everything it touches. Within an hour, the Ridge site was crawling with law enforcement. I watched from a distance as agents stormed the yard, seizing boxes, escorting employees out in cuffs. Harlan was among them. Even from far away, I saw the moment he realized the cameras were still rolling. He didn't yell this time. He just lowered his head. Rosa found me 2 days later. I was staying at a safe house arranged by Riley, who'd spent the last 48 hours giving interviews and forwarding evidence to every major outlet. She looked tired, but alive. They didn't expect you to keep streaming. That's what broke them. They can fight a report. They can't fight real time. I nodded, though part of me still trembled inside. We won? She exhaled. The state froze Prescott's assets. Multiple arrests. But winning, she looked away. That's just surviving a different way. Weeks passed. Briarwood Estates changed overnight. New board, open meetings, neighbors cautiously rebuilding trust. Some still wouldn't look me in the eye, afraid of what the truth had cost them. I didn't blame them. Every time I walked my yard, I thought of that first notice taped to my door. One word printed bold. Trespassing. I laughed at it now, not out of humor, but understanding. Because that's what I'd done. I'd trespassed where I wasn't supposed to. Into the space between their lies and my rights. They said I crossed a line. Maybe I did. But sometimes the only way to protect your home is to break into the walls built around it. The final hearing came 6 months later. The state declared the Prescott network dismantled, its contracts nullified. Rosa testified first. I testified last. When the judge asked if I had any closing statement, I said, I didn't start this to win. I started it because I was tired of being afraid of my own yard. The courtroom went quiet. And in that silence, I finally felt free. That night, as I sat on my porch, the street was calm again. Sprinklers ticking, porch lights glowing, a breeze moving through the oaks. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking for shadows. Just the sound of home.